comprehensive training in all the engineering fields, which had very lucrative and promising occupational prospects abroad. Swami Gauranga requested his parents to allow him to retire with some land and cow in a village so that he can peacefully practice spiritual life instead of getting entangled further into what is called Jada Vidya and the rat race in this material world. But his parents wanted him to join IIT, and so he conceded to their desire. He started preaching about God right from the time he entered into IIT. Ultimately, the culmination of his intense spiritual quest from childhood was reached when he came across the 17 golden volumes of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, translated by Srila Prabhupada in the philosophical section of the IIT Central Library. So, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is the topmost and deepest spiritual literature alongside Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and Swami Gauranga immersed himself day and night for 2 years with great relish and completed reading it several times and by learning Bengali alphabet. At that time, Swamiji was chanting the names of Lord Nityananda and Gauranga along with the 32 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. After completing his 5-year course in IIT and obtaining his degree, he joined the International Society for Krishna Consciousness called ISKCON, founded by Srila Prabhupada, and served as a brahmachari leader in book distribution right from the beginning. He was later put in charge of publishing, designing, marketing of Srila Prabhupada's book as production manager of Bhakti Vedanta Book Trust, which is largest publisher of Vedic books today throughout the world. He served in this position for more than 5 years due to his sincere and untiring effort. The Vedic book production almost tripled in 3 years, and BBT Mumbai became the largest publisher of Vedic books in the world in English as well as several other languages. Meanwhile, he utilized his spare time in deeply studying the books and teachings of Srila Prabhupada and later those of the previous acharyas, the associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was also one of the top-rated favorite speakers of Atma's serial on Sony television channel. If some of you had come across, say, in late 90s, he used to appear very often on Sony television speaking on Bhagavad Gita. Along with this, he deeply meditated on Srila Prabhupada's instruction for accepting the sannyas order of life for the purpose of widely preaching Krishna consciousness, especially through Gauranama Katha and Hare Krishna Mahamantra. He accepted the sannyas order of life from His Holiness Tridanti Swami Bhakti Kumud Sanat Goswami Maharaj, who is 90 years, also the godbrother of Srila Prabhupada and disciple of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada at Behla, Calcutta. His Diksha Guru, Bhakti Shastri Parampada Maharaj, gave the spiritual Diksha name of Gauranga Pada Dasa at the time of initiation, and His Divine Grace Bhakti Kumud Sanat Goswami gave the sannyasi name Tridandi Bhikshu Bhakti Ratna Sadhu. This is how he is now called as Swami Gauranga Pada in short. The Swamiji is presently working on translations of many books establishing the glories of holy names and pastimes of Lord Nityananda Gauranga and Hare Krishna Mahamantra. He is also preaching Gauranga Katha, Krishna Katha through house programs, Chaitanya Bhagavat Saptas, Gauranga Mantra seminars, study groups, lectures in English, Hindi and Gujarati. Swami Gauranga now has a permanent personal place of residence, his ashram in Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. To sum up, Swamiji in short awakens, eats, walks, does and sleeps, always chanting the names of Lord Nityananda Gauranga and Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is what I thought I will speak about Swamiji. And today he is going to talk on a very interesting topic on, there are several tips of management that we pick from Bhagavad Gita. So he has very nicely assimilated some of the salient features from our scriptures, that is based on Bhagavad Gita, and he is going to speak on some of the management tips which can be fruitfully put to use. And some of you youngsters who have come fresh from college or 3 or 4 years of experience will appreciate how much intensely the topic on leadership and management styles have been covered in Bhagavad Gita. And it is also what we would say as marketing for Bhagavad Gita.
because as Mr. Pratap was saying, the boundaries are breaking down between our home and our workplace, uh, especially since there is no time gap uh, between going to our workplace to our home, and plus so much is expected of us. So it's very important that we learn to actually also try to make our workplace a very suitable vehicle to crafting the meaning of our life, for the well-being of our own self, for the well-being of our company, for the progress and advancement of our company, and actually the whole world. So it gives us a very valuable opportunity to uh, uh, craft the meaning of our life. Before starting the management tips from the Gita, I would like to give a brief introduction of why corporate spirituality is relevant in the modern times. In the international business leaders like Richard Gruson, he was the professor of entrepreneurial strategy in the Trinity Western School, Business School in America. He says that spirituality should become a part of the entrepreneurship curricula, because it gives angle to corporate life, which is much required in the present day. Being we are so much saturated with so much tensions and stress and responsibilities and expectations. So he felt a very great need for spirituality to be added to corporate life. The first empirical study of this issue was conducted in October 2004 by Josie Pass. It was entitled The Spiritual Audit of Corporate America, and where they found that employees, they work more sincerely for organizations whom they consider to be spiritual, because they are more secure, they feel more secure and less fearful, and they are less likely to compromise their values at work. Why do they feel less likely? Because the company itself has spiritual values, so they themselves do not feel like compromising values at work, and they are able to throw themselves more into their job and their work, because they feel that I am not only working for monetary gains and having a prosperous material career, but I am also working for something higher, which will give me real satisfaction. So that was the study conducted in America, and the Gallup organization is very famous in America for conducting studies on the basis of connecting spirituality with corporate life, and they have come out with real, amazing statistics, which I cannot go into in today's lecture, but maybe some other time. But basically they found that 48% of the Americans who work, they feel a need to incorporate spirituality at work, which makes the work more fulfilling, more progressive, more efficient, more meaningful and less stressful. So 95% of the Americans believe in general about it, but 48% of those who are working, they want this to be added. And even the Indian companies, there is one company known as WNC Global in India. I think they have started off with, they started this trend in India of corporate spirituality, and they are having tremendous results in the overall health of the company has increased, has been benefited. And now almost all companies are open to, if their employees want to have a spiritual angle to their work, which makes it more fulfilling. They are very much open to conduct this kind of seminars, which we are having today. So corporate spirituality is becoming popular to the mounting evidence that spiritual minded programs in the workplace not only soothe the worker psyche, but they deliver improved productivity. It's a spiritual way of soothing our mental stress and problems, which are a direct cause for our productivity. So we see that creating a consonance of values based on spirituality in our workplace, and with our customers will build loyalty, even more value, success, stability and satisfaction. I was addressing a gathering of the marketing managers of Blue Star India a few days back, and I told them that when they go out to market their products, what kind of smile they give. I mean, when we see the smile of the marketing managers, it looks quite artificial. Without having a spiritual touch, if you see somebody who is marketing, we can immediately feel that the marketing person is having some own interest in selling this product. But when there is some consonance of spiritual values in the company and some spirituality is introduced in the curricula, the marketing managers are more successful because they go out with more integrity, with more connection to the company, with themselves, with the product. They feel that not only they are doing something for their own selves monetarily, but they are actually having a spiritual connection. So then they become more aware, and then their smile is quite natural, which comes from within. When one is satisfied, then one has a more natural kind of marketing strategy. So more value, more success, more stability and more satisfaction. These are the points which come up because unlike the marketplace of 20 years back, where things could go slowly, nowadays we require instant decision making, instant action, building relationships with partners, employees. So spiritually based approaches which have a spiritual basis help to build up loyal relationships with our customers, and especially in India, where customers tend to have more faith in those companies who have a good moral background, sound spiritual background, and it helps us to actually also consider the long neglected people side of the equation. And not only we are concerned about our own profits, but we are concerned about how to deal one-to-one with our customers, with our colleagues. So all this is taking a lot of significance in the present day. Chris Kalra, also the CEO of Biogenics in USA, he came to this conclusion that he took a 3-month off. His company was going in a loss. He took a 3-month off and studied the Gita, and directly came back and implemented the tips from the Gita, and he found that he was listening to people better. His awareness was more broadened. He could assimilate, he could implement things in a more quicker way because of the spiritual based approach, and he found that his company won 12 patents immediately, and it was a big success. It immediately went into profitability. We can see the practical example in Atul of Ashokji coming into Atul, and because of his basis being spiritual in a very moralistic approach, and we can immediately see that Atul has turned to profitability and it is soaring new heights because of this kind of an approach. So it always is very rewarding in the end to have some kind of a basis to this with this approach. And as all of you know, that the Gita is actually the literary support for the ancient Indian civilization. It is strongly derives its root, the civilization, from the Gita and the Vedas. So it is a most systematic statement about any activity we do in life, including the workplace, corporate life, and our home life, day-to-day life. So since home life is merging with the work life, it's very important that we have a holistic solution rather than an individual solution. Because something which works here will not work there, and something which works there will not work here. That will not do for us, because we need some kind of a thing which works everywhere, so that we are always in tune with the reality of life. So I think that is a brief introduction about why corporate spirituality is important. Now we'll go on to directly the management tips in the Gita. This is only just a brief and a summarized form of the Gita regarding our workplace, but I would like to cover many points today, so we'll go a little fast. If you have any questions when we discuss each tip, please take notes and let me know either at the end or during the seminar. So, Krishna teaches us that fulfillment lies in the action itself, not in the result of the actions. Self-fulfillment comes from knowing that we have done what we must do, executed the will of God. Do your best and all will be well. Action and execution of actions with excellence is what we control. What is in our hands is thing with that is we can do our task to the best of our capacity. The result is not in our hands. Right? So, if we just concentrate on the task for the sake of the task, for doing it to the best of our capacity, then there is a very great chance that we will be successful in it. Whereas when we are doing the task, if we worry too much about the result, then we will tend to get distracted from the task at hand. So, and we don't even get satisfaction. So, one of the basic tips from the Gita is that one should concentrate on the work at hand instead of worrying too much about the result. If we do the work with maximum efficiency and with excellent concentration, then don't you think the result will be good? Automatically, it will be good. But if we divide the time while we are working, 50% on thinking about the action and 50% on the result, then it may get spoiled. So better one should act for the sake of the task, action at hand. And then it will give us real fulfillment. Our work will give us real fulfillment. We will like to do it with enthusiasm. Rather than, oh, my superior has given me this work. Why did he give it today? No, I wanted to relax today. Why today? So we normally start rebelling inside. But when we do the work for the sake of its work itself, then we feel very satisfied. We gladly accept whatever we are given and we discharge it to the best of our capacity at any point of time. Another difficult problem which we face is resistance to change. Nowadays, there is so much stiff competition and survival of the fittest. So our superiors may always keep having to do some changes to our workplace, to our tasks, to our position. But we feel that a great barrier to decision making is the fear of change at our workplace. After all, choices lead to action and action leads to change. Because there are choices, there is competition, we have to do the right action at the right time, so there will be change. One cannot avoid change. If one has come to the company feeling that there should be no change, I should be kept in whatever position I am, then it is a very static thing. So one should welcome changes and good changes. Studies they show that even good changes cause almost as much stress as unwelcome changes. Studies conducted in corporate life, the employees they feel that oh, I get changed, so they go into stress and they give a lower output. So this capacity to cope up with the changes is very important at our workplace. And that is Krishna's simple formula, Dhiras Tatra Na Muhyati. That those who are not afraid of change can properly face everything that comes and take the right decisions at the right time for their company. Why should we be afraid of change when we know that this world is so rapidly changing, like Ashokji explained with his nice poem. There is so much change going on at every moment, every second. So why we should be afraid of change? We should take it as it comes and make the right decision at the right time, to accept change as the norm and to accept that we ourselves must change as we go through life is built into the concept of the Gita. The Gita stresses on that concept that if our body is changing constantly, our environment is changing, So we should always be open to change. We should not rebel. We should accept our superiors when they try to change us, because it is like our own molding is going on for the better. The third tip is about team building. To delight in and appreciate the good work of our colleagues is the most important factor in team building. Sometimes some executives ask me, Swamiji, why am I not able to build a team? I am trying so hard, but somehow the team spirit is not developing. The simple answer is, my dear sir, do you care to speak some nice words to your team colleagues for the good they do, or to appreciate them? If you don't, then that is the major problem, which leads to not being functioning as a team. There cannot be a team without mutual respect and appreciation for each other's abilities. In a team, when there is success in the team, the leader should not take the full credit without giving any credit to the other members. If you know a software company like Adobe Photoshop, Adobe is a very big software company in America after Microsoft. If you have used some Adobe programs, you will see that when you click open Adobe program, in the opening screen they give the names of all their software engineers. You know, it's a big list of all their engineers who have designed that program. They are not afraid of some risk that there will be poaching, and the names of our engineers will be known to the world. But they give credit to everyone, so that creates a very cohesive feeling. And I am seeing that from the last 10 years, the same engineers are working for Adobe. You must have noticed that the names are not changing. In fact, more names are getting added. So team spirit can be developed by mutual appreciation, trying to give credit to everyone to the extent we can, and it does not require much. Even a few words of appreciation and encouragement can go a big way to boost the morale of our team members. Sometimes we work really hard and we expect our superior maybe just to say thank you, or just a few words to speak some kind words to us. And when they are not coming, then we tend to get, I worked so hard, and so and he's not even appreciating it. So maybe the next time you give a task to that person, he may work, but not with the full their dedication to the task. But just a few words can turn it around. I mean, a few good words can help people under you to really blossom in their work. And it does not cost us much to speak a few kind words. It may take a few minutes. You don't have to pay anything, or you don't have to do anything to speak some good words. A team is one which works together and succeeds together. Senior executives should encourage, appreciate, correct, and lift up the junior ones with their words and example. And the executives on the same level should support each other. The basic principle coming from the Vedas, that the senior has got the right to correct the junior if the senior appreciates the junior for the good work the junior does. If the senior does not appreciate the junior, then the senior has no right to correct the junior also. Both things should go hand in hand. Dadati pratigrinati guhyam akhyati princhati bhunte bhojate chaiva sarvida priti lakshanam. In the Vedas it is said that reciprocation, the symptom of reciprocation, it should be both. You correct and you appreciate. So you push someone. Pushing is required nowadays. We tend to get slack. So you require to push. But you push with a big smile. You push in a right way. If you push with anger, then the work will not get done. So those who are executives on the equal level should support each other, and executives on the senior level should help the junior ones, pick them up, correct them, appreciate them, guide them. Then that will be a proper teamwork. If they make a mistake, then don't be angry at them, give them few chances, correct them, let them know that whatever they have done, we appreciate it. The fourth tip is one needs to practice to actually succeed in our work. Work is not theoretical exercise. Constant practice is the key to being well prepared for action. In fact, Karma Yoga places the greatest emphasis on abhyas or constant practice and calls it a spiritual endeavor. Abhyasa yoga yuktena. You know, Krishna himself, he set his example. How did he master the 64 branches of knowledge? He went to Ujjain in the ashram of his guru, Sandipani Muni. And his guru taught him during the daytime the 64 kinds of knowledge in 64 days. And he mastered all of them in the night. Every branch of knowledge he used to learn in the daytime, he mastered them in the night. So in 64 days, Krishna and Balaram both were perfect with 64 branches of knowledge. So practice is the key to success. That we need to practice ourselves. Everyone, young, old, sick and infirm, can achieve perfection through dedicated application. We should train ourselves to do our tasks in advance. Success comes to those who are well prepared. Seeds must be pressed to yield oil. Wood must be heated to release the fire within. The Karma Yogi must practice to realize his inner potential. Without practice, we cannot develop our inner potential. So, we should always practice that. If my superior tells me to do this task, how will I do it? One should be prepared. If I have to do this work, how will I do it? So, practice is something which will help us to realize our potential. The fifth tip is self-examination. Self-examination, instead of blaming others, upon seeing that oneself or others have failed, one should try to go to the root cause of the problem and find a permanent solution so that history does not repeat itself. Not only ourselves, if some other colleagues also fail, we should not rejoice, see, he has failed and I have succeeded. One should not rejoice. That kind of mentality will ultimately lead to our own failure at some point of time. So, if somebody else fails among our colleagues at work, we should try to study it, we should try to find out what was the cause of it, and we should try to find out some solution which you would do in case you were given that same task. And so that this will never happen again. Failure is the stepping stone to success only if one learns from it. Failure and success are the part of the same coin. Two sides of the same coin. But if one does not learn from failure, then failure will keep on repeating. If one gets agitated and frustrated from failure, then one cannot learn from failure. At the time of failure, one should have an equanimity. One should maintain an equal mind and try to study the failure. That is what Krishna says in the Gita. Gita says that this self-examination requires equanimity of mind during failure so that one can introspect with a clear mind. How many of you have experienced failure? Everyone. And how many of you have really introspected at that time to come out with a solution?
Yes or no?
Okay. So, this is a chance that not to be disturbed by failure, instead to use the failure for our own benefit, for the benefit of the company, so that it does not repeat again. If the failure keeps on repeating, it means that we are not introspective. So it's very important that we need to do some self-examination in this regard. tip number 6 is the focus on concentration. Lack of concentration is the common cause for failure or being placid in the office. In this state, one may know what must be done, but cannot summon the stamina or the enthusiasm to do it. One of the causes of lack of concentration is we are given a task, we know what to do, but we don't have the motivation to do it due to some reasons. A musician can hear the music in his dream, but he cannot play it when he awakens because of a lack of concentration. So understanding that our work is an offering to God, one should be very mindful of where our mind is at our workplace. When we have a spiritual angle to our work, we know that we have to do our own benefit, the benefit of the company, and ultimately the work is an offering to God. So I cannot allow my mind to get distracted. Like, if you go for some very important thing, like if you sit for puja or you do some important, do you allow your mind to wander? You know you are doing some important thing, your mind should be concentrated. So when you consider your work, you take it seriously, not only as a means to attain money and attain stability in life, but also your responsibility towards your company and towards God through your work. Then one will be careful not to while away the precious mental energy during work. It's an offering, it's an offering. According to the Vedas, even the company, we have many obligations to our company which is hired. It is known as Rina. Rina means obligation. So we don't fulfill that obligation properly towards our company by working nicely and allowing our mind to wander on unnecessary things. Then what will happen is that that obligation, we will have to continue fulfilling that obligation for many lives. We may even have to take next life to work in the company again to fulfill that obligation, because the Rina we have to fulfill, and that Rina one can fulfill by working nicely, concentrating without any distraction, thinking of something else, and our work does not become karma yoga, as the right consciousness is the key connection to success at work. Karma yoga means the consciousness is important. Otherwise the donkey is also working. Do you think the donkey is doing karma yoga? Why is the donkey not doing karma yoga? Can you tell me? Because the donkey is working just for the piece of the dangling carrot. Which the master has promised him, the carrot and the green grass. I will give you grass after you complete your work. So the donkey is always thinking, oh, I am working because of that. So we should not simply act because of the monetary gains. That does not become karma yoga. The benefits we are going to get, that will come on their own when we work. But we should work with the right consciousness. We should work for the sake of the work, and we should concentrate for attaining perfection and satisfaction in our work without too much distraction of our mind, too much thinking about what we are going to gain materially in return. Patience and perseverance is tip 7. True knowledge comes from within our soul, so it comes with experience, it comes with patience, and it comes from action. Proper education helps to manifest that knowledge from within. One should always be ready to learn. Patience is a very important virtue. You are all young entrepreneurs, and a common problem among young entrepreneurs is always to search for green pastures, greener pastures. Don't wait for the time when you will stabilize, and one always wants to look for some minor immediate gains. But what will happen is, overall you will not become a fulfilled entrepreneur in the long run, because without experience there cannot be success. You need to gain experience. At the young stage in our entrepreneur life, we need to actually give it a top priority to gain experience, to be patient, and not simply to jump from one company to another and jack of all and master of none. In fact, nowadays also companies also insist that a new entrepreneur whom they employ, they should at least be stable for at least 2 to 3 years in some company. There should be a record of stability and experience instead of just whimsically changing companies because of getting some little more monetary benefit. So one should have patience and one should act. One should try to gain experience and one should give its best. One should be thankful to the company for what the company is giving. And one should always be ready to learn. The best student is the best leader. Without learning, one can never progress in our life. So we should be ready to learn. At no point in our corporate ladder we should feel that I am not prepared to learn. Right from the CEO to the common staff, we all should be ready to learn. If there are some good tips, if there are good examples to learn, and to learn one requires patience. One should never feel, oh, why are you teaching me? Why are you telling me? I know everything. When we get this frame of mind that I know everything, that means our progress will stop. Is it right? Our progress will stop. So one should never have this kind of mentality. Instead of being a victim of excessive greed and seeing work only as a money-making machine, one should learn to work for the work's sake. And one will learn so many things. Money is not everything. Those who have a lot of money are still not happy if they find no satisfaction with their work. There are people who have lots and lots of money, but they are not still happy because what they are working, they don't have any higher purpose behind their work. So even if you get lots of money, but still if you are not fulfilled, you don't have a sense of fulfillment in your work. So thus work culture based on spiritual values is becoming very important. Even in US, corporate leaders, the CEOs, and they are asking, okay, now we have earned so much, we are working, so what next now? I mean, what is something higher? We can't leave the workplace is an integral part of our life. But what next? What is the higher purpose of the workplace? And that is work culture. That's where work culture comes in. Work culture has to be based on spiritual values like integrity, honesty, stability, security, and all these things. So that will only come when we understand that we need patience and perseverance. Tip number 8, seeing our work as worship. Krishna's knowledge in the Gita gives us insight and wisdom and will free us from misconceptions, eliminate false behaviors and actuate a withdrawal from wrong ways of working and living. This in turn generates a feeling of peace and fulfillment with oneself and with the world we live in, a sense of harmony. In Sanskrit this is known as Jnana. Jnana means work as worship. It means that to eliminate the wrong ways of working, to eliminate the obstacles which come in hearing our conscience, to always have moral integrity and spiritual values. Workplace can actually become a place of worship and a place of fulfillment and satisfaction for the employer and employee. If honesty is the basis of our work, it will lead to fulfillment. Because when we cheat, then we ourselves know that we are cheating, even if nobody else knows. So how can we get fulfillment? We will always feel a lack of fulfillment. you will feel that we have actually missed the higher purpose of our work. So the employer and the employee both will be fully satisfied if we consider the workplace as a place of worship and adhere to moral and values while doing in our work. That is what Krishna is trying to tell us. The tip 9, we come to the sense of cohesiveness. The sense of cohesiveness is a difficult problem nowadays. Very difficult for us to work together. The most concrete example of true cohesiveness is our attitude towards our physical body. Suppose I poke myself in the eye when I am talking, I will use the other finger to rub my eye, and console it. Automatically my other finger will go to rub that eye. See, we ourselves, we have so much inbuilt cohesiveness. I will not cut off the finger and throw it away because it has hurt my eye. Sometimes if I am eating and start talking, my teeth will bite my tongue. Do I break my teeth in order to punish them? Have you broken your own teeth? No. Never. No, I do not. My teeth are a part of me and I can give them pain than I can do to my tongue. I have no hatred towards my teeth. So we see that when we have a sense of cohesiveness, we are immediately raised to a higher level of understanding. Among our colleagues, among our team, we see everybody as a part of our team, of our company, and we don't hurt each other. That is a major problem nowadays. I have seen many executives, they leave because of mutual hurting. It may be a small thing, or it may be a big thing. But sometimes companies, they lose very important executives and very important personnel just because of some hurting which is going on. So that will not happen if we have a sense of cohesiveness, as explained in the Gita, that all my parts of the physical body are important and I am impartial in my actions to all. So I should have an attitude of service to all. Just like we have attitude of service to all the parts of the body. I want to clean my body, I want to feed my body. We have a sense of service to our body. So we should have a sense of service to all our colleagues and have no judgmental reaction. Sometimes we have we judge on the drop of the hat without even taking stock of the situation. That destroys cohesiveness. So we should consider the situation and then act impartially and not have personal prejudice. Our action should not be based on personal prejudice. Otherwise the cohesiveness will be lost. I have no desire to hurt or to destroy. This frame of mind is the basis of corporate spirituality. If we want to have a congenial corporate life and success and higher retention capacity, companies are asking how do we develop a higher retention capacity. So then this cohesiveness should be considered right from the top. How to hold everyone together by having a impartial, not judgmental attitude, and having attitude of service to others and not hurting each other on a personal level just because some work has not taken place. The 10th tip is motivation for excellence. If we change for the better, the workplace around us will be changed for the good. Each of us influences a great many people. The wise man hates none and is a friend of all. In corporate life, do not wait for others to change. Begin with yourself. If we change, then our whole environment will change. Believe me, if a change in one person for the good can affect many people. Don't wait for others to change. If you feel something wrong is going on, then try to change yourself first. Change for the better. And automatically show by your example. Example speaks louder than words. So, ability to positively influence our results and surroundings and set a good example for others should be the motivation for us to attain excellence in our work. The motivation to attain excellence should not only be to have a promotion and get more pay. That should not be the only motivation. But the motivation to attain excellence is to set a very nice example for others, to actually motivate the whole workplace by our example. That should be the motivation for attaining excellence. That will benefit our workplace, our company so much. Think carefully before you act or speak at your workplace. Don't think that nobody will take it seriously. Every action, every word at our workplace is having some effect on others. It may end up having a big impact on the company also. So we should act and think before we act and speak at our workplace. Every action will have a positive and negative effect on the result and other team members. Whatever results we have set to act, every action will determine and have a positive or a negative effect. So it's very important that our motivation is something higher than simply promotion. Motivation should be and then recognition. Okay, when we get excellence, we will get recognition. Recognition will run after us once we get excellence. But the motivation for excellence should be to really set a good example for everyone. Because that will not lead us to frustration. Sometimes we gain excellence but we don't get the promotion or we don't get the recognition. Then we may tend to get frustrated. Oh, I got excellent results, but why am I not being celebrated everywhere? You know. But if you have set a good example and you have motivated others, then that should be enough. You know, enough motivation for what you are doing. Tip 11 is empowerment at work. If true knowledge, our ability to see the whole, this vision of accommodating others brings in a desire to serve, assist and help, then the moment when we are unable to serve, it means that we need to revive our vision. That is inherent in the nature of our soul and only its manifestation is aberrant. That means that you can do something about it and pretty quickly too, because all you have to do is change your attitude. The ability is already there and you have to just let it become apparent. This is an empowering concept. It means that when the attitude to serve our company, serve our colleagues, we don't feel that attitude, we should know something is wrong and we should try to change it immediately at the right time. And that means that we are empowering ourselves in the right direction. We are born with the ability to serve and assist and to find peace and self-fulfillment. The Gita says that true knowledge is available to us all. We have to just look inwards. It is available to all of us. We only have to seek it, just as we know it is for our bodies, we can know it is for work and life. So, to improve our work quality, we should always be monitoring our attitude. Yes.
I would like to take you through the previous slide as well as this slide both. So normally in corporate life or normally in industry I have seen that instead of changing ourselves, we always try to see the other person's act or his own actions, either our boss or our colleagues.
Right.
And we say that
Yeah.
doing this, so I am this. He is doing that, so I am that.
Yeah. The credit of success I take and the failure is blamed on
somebody else.
somebody
At the
else.
same time, even the credit of success not being given to me and somebody else being given more credit, then also we are getting frustrated.
Right.
Like if somebody with the same level, we are getting the same pay package or the whatever it is with the increment or salary,
Yeah.
then we are getting frustrated.
Yeah.
At the same time, here we are saying constantly that we should change ourselves and look into this. This is very good for us.
Yes.
But how do we get there in a corporate life, such kind of a comparison, such kind of an attitude, such kind of a look
Right.
to others, and then everybody is bad and I am at best of my place. So how did cultural some kind of impact in corporate?
Right. That I explained in the previous slide. That if you work for the sake of work, if your work is, you have a higher purpose behind your work, to craft the meaning of life, you have some spiritual values, you will not, simply work for higher monetary rise or a pay rise. You are working for satisfying your own self, for getting experience, for being patient. Then you will not be affected simply if somebody else is given a pay rise and you are not given, because you are deriving satisfaction. You are still thankful to the company to give you that much needed experience and to develop the values. And in regard to giving credit and failure, I already discussed that also previously, that at the time of failure, instead of blaming it on others, we should try to have an equanimity of mind and try to find out what was the cause of that failure, to rectify it, go to the root of that failure and try to solve it instead of blaming it on someone else. Even if someone else has failed, still there must be some reason why he has failed, he or she has failed. So instead of blaming it on others, we should try to find out the cause and try to help those who have failed. Or if we have failed, it does not, it's not wrong that you just accept it frankly. Okay, I did commit a mistake. It doesn't take too much to just accept that, okay, I did a mistake and I won't do it again. I will look into it. I will think about it instead of blaming others. To be frank and honest, that is the honesty and integrity of a person. Integrity means that to accept when one is wrong. One may not always be right. The saying is, err is human, to err is human. So one may not always be right. So to accept that, okay, I have done wrong. And if others commit a mistake, instead of taking, showing that you are better than them or taking one step on them, or just try to help them to go to the root cause of their mistake, to solve it. So otherwise if the mentality at work is simply that I am working for higher pay and why am I neglected, then it's known as the fruitive mentality in the Gita. The fruitive mentality will not help us to advance in our life, in our work. There are many companies which give higher pay, but I have seen the executives and companies, they may give lots of pay, but their executives are totally dissatisfied with the work culture. They hardly like it. They say, oh, this is not good at all. So more important is we work for the sake of our work, get fulfillment, and the pay will come automatically. When we work with full dedication to our work itself, then the result will be there. In fact, Krishna says that when you work for the sake of work, the fruits will start searching after you. Normally when you are searching for the fruits will not come. Like there is an example of a cat, she was trying to catch the tail. Because she thought that by catching the tail, I will become happy. And the more she was trying to catch the tail, the more the tail was going with her, She couldn't catch the tail. But an old cat came and told her, you just stop catching the tail and the tail will always be with you. Just stop catching the tail and the tail will always be with you. So those who work for with dedication for the sake of the work and trying to make a better future for oneself, for the company, and as an offering to God, the results will come in bounty. One will get promoted, everything will happen at the right time, because this effort will not remain unnoticed by the company, by the superiors, or by God Himself. So that kind of
this concept of working for the sake of work without caring for the result. Okay.
I'm not saying caring, but I'm saying without too much
thinking about the result.
Yeah.
Okay. Without thinking about it. Has one issue
Yes.
with this. Of course, of late, there was a book which was a flavor of the last decade, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People by Stephen Covey. Now, there, he has one of the habits which he has mentioned is begin with the end in mind. What you are aiming for. Once that is clear, then work towards that. Now that's contrary in a way here. But what happens is, if the end is clear in the mind, then that end kind of acts like a compass. It kind of sets the direction of the work. So because if I totally get involved in work, then there is a possibility that I will deviate from the purpose without even understanding. So comparing it with the end that I have in mind, gives me the direction, tells me, oh, you're deviating a bit, straight to another thing. So it kind of acts like a feedback also. Okay, because work is not maybe a 5-minute thing. I mean, it could be 5 years kind of long project that you're working on. So the end also is definitely a compass, keeps directing you correctly. And again, in Bhagavad Gita, when it's like emphasizing that you work for the sake of the work, okay, definitely there is a higher end or higher gain that we are talking in terms of. Okay, not the immediate gain out of the work, but the spirituality as the gain, the Lord as the gain. So there is definitely a gain that is there in the mind. Okay, which we are saying, okay, don't let the gain overwhelm you, but the gain is expected.
No, the end which you are talking about is actually a part of the work. When one takes up a project, one has the goal one has to achieve. That is actually a part of the work. What I am talking about is a fruitive mentality which is outside of work, which comes like expectations for getting rewarded for that work, and those kind of goals. Yeah, those were the things which the Gita says are unnecessary to too much being pondered upon. Whereas the end of the work, the goal of the work is actually a part of the work. You cannot start a project without knowing what is the ultimate goal. So that goal is required. That parameter one has to keep in the mind. But apart from that, I am saying one should not have any other expectations. Distractions to overwhelm the mind. Focus is required. That I will come to actually. One should start the work with the goal in mind, and one should always keep on checking whether I am on the right track. That is a part of the work itself, the project itself. But having extraneous things go after I complete this project, will the company have a nice party to celebrate me? Will the company give me a pay rise? Will my superior give me congratulations? Or all these kinds of other expectations are may not be too much focused on, because they lead to depression or frustration later if they have expectations like that, and if they are not fulfilled. Whereas then we don't derive the satisfaction of actually reaching our goal. That satisfaction itself is enough. That is the actual reward for our work, that we have done it successfully. No amount of external reward can actually compare to that reward of actually doing the work successfully. So your point is well taken, but that is actually a part of it.
Swamiji, in your previous line you were talking about change, that everybody should, rather than expecting anyone else to change, the change should start from yourself.
Yes.
But in the corporate culture, you can say a change or compromise, whatever, if there is a mentality that there is some person who is always ready for a change, and someone who is always revolting a change.
Right.
So always the person who accepts a change is done with all the changes and other things. And the person who is with that revolting nature, everybody is afraid they are anyway not going to accept it, so rather keep him away, and the other person unnecessarily, whether he is eligible or not, whatever it is, he is always the one
victim.
Yes. So how do we deal with this?
You should understand that the person who is not willing to change will suffer in the long run. In the short run, he may avoid getting changed, but ultimately, no superior or no company would like to have a lame boss or a person who is not willing to change. So in the long run, it is suffering. On the same hand, the superior should also understand that they should appreciate one who is willing to change, and one should not overburden. See, this philosophy not only is valid to the subordinate, but it should is also applicable to the leaders or the superiors. All of them have to be in the right frame of mind. That one should appreciate for what the subordinates are doing, and one should not overburden them. One should try to have a uniform kind of a policy for change. If somebody is revolting, then that person should be called and face to face. One should have a talk. Because in corporate life, what happens is if some wrong thing is going on for a long time, it becomes a thorn. It becomes, there are doubts created in everyone's mind. So duty of a superior or a leader is to not let anything ambiguous exist under him. Ambiguity is a cause of doom actually. Is a failure. It causes a lot of problems. Doubts, ambiguity causes doubts. So if one is feeling that proper justice is not being done on us and somebody, comparison, then one should be frank and ask the superior, and the superior also to take it in the right manner and try to rectify the situation. So there should never be ambiguity. Otherwise, there can never be teamwork. There can never be cohesiveness at the workplace. And what are our enemies at the workplace? This is tip number 12. Desire, which leads to selfishness and ignorance, which leads to sloth and laziness, are the enemies that reside within us and cloud the ability to take the right decisions at the right time at our workplace. Selfishness, if we simply working selfishly, then we will not be able to become a successful entrepreneur. That is a major problem facing nowadays. Companies that take the employees in a good spirit, and then they find out the employees are very selfish. Just interested in their own benefit. So then it creates it's a vicious cycle. The company then doesn't want to help the employees, and the employees selfish. They think, I'm not getting benefited. So one should give up the selfishness and sloth and laziness. Selfishness leads to laziness and sloth. So that we should give up at work. One should always be ready for any action, any kind of task which is given to us by our seniors, and one should be always in the right frame of mind to take the right decision. So these are the fortresses of the enemy that we must avoid getting trapped in. The forces that propel us towards these traps can be fought through self-discipline and dynamic action. One should never be lazy at the workplace. One should we get enough time to sleep in your home, right? Do you get enough time to sleep at home? Then why we should be lazy at our workplace? Self-discipline will help us to conquer selfishness, and dynamic action will help us to conquer laziness or inefficiency at work. So it is very much required to always be ready for action. Like Arjuna, Krishna told Arjuna, you be ready for action. You are standing in the middle of the battlefield. That is why the whole Bhagavad Gita was actually instructed by Krishna only in a span of 45 minutes to 1 hour. Do you know that? 700 verses in Sanskrit. Krishna spoke only in a span of 45 minutes to 1 hour. Because the whole goal was to inspire Arjuna to do action. So Krishna gave a condensed form of management tips and action, dynamic action, how to perform. So that's very much required that we never compromise our tendency to do dynamic action. Fifth, 13 is conflict resolution. There will always be conflicts in our work. Good decisions in the face of conflict will lead to excellence in actions and higher satisfaction from our work. When we get conflict, if we take the right decision, then it will lead to excellence. Because conflict actually is a stepping stone to success. It shows our sense of presence. It shows our intelligence. It shows our awareness at the time of conflict. If we take the right decision. So excellence requires discipline of our body and intellect, so that we may exercise good judgment, make the right decision. Gita says that tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asu mantra. Control the senses like a tortoise. Withdraw the mind from other thoughts during at work. Don't let the mind wander to your home or to your other activities, extracurricular activities. The company is giving you a nice chance to do that later. But don't let the mind wander into all of them. And withdraw the mind and focus it at the work at hand. Otherwise, what will happen is at the time of conflict or the time of problem, your mind, if it is wandering somewhere, you won't be able to take the right decision. A wandering mind, variegated mind cannot be focused properly on one thing. Vyavasayatmika buddhi eke ho Guru Nandana samadho na vidiyate. Krishna is telling Arjuna, if your intelligence is many branched, if your thoughts are many branched, then that one pointed resolution to perform an action will never arise. So, always keep your mind and intelligence and focus on the task at hand, so that you are ready to take any decision at any point of time. And nowadays you have to take decisions like this very quickly. You don't have even time to calm down your mind and to relax, get free from stress, and then take a decision. Sometimes we have to take instantaneous decisions. So if our mind is always in a state where one is focused, then we'll be able to quickly, management will be at our fingertips. It will be very easy. Even making no decision is an action, a choice, albeit an unconscious one. So we might as well be proactive rather than reactive. Better to be prepared, with having equanimity of mind, ready for anything which comes. Rather than react sharply at something which comes which is not expected, like a conflict or a problem. Normally we tend to react very sharply. But that is not required if we have a proper balance of mind. The whole Gita is talking about how to conquer the mind. So it is very much relevant in our workplace to always be prepared, make the right decision. Decision making, one hopes that decision making is the conscious compromise of the reason and emotion influenced by internal and external forces, where the trade-offs and risks are understood and communicated. In reality, decisions are often made in a split second. How often have you heard about the defining moment with much of the rationalizing and action planning done afterwards? So it's very much required always to have full presence of mind, and in all situations at the workplace. And this is very effectively possible by imbibing the spiritual values of the Gita. To always have presence of mind is not, there is no material formula for that. There is no material solution for that. It has always to have a spiritual solution. Because mind is very subtle form of matter. So one needs to have a spiritual angle to always have the right presence of mind at the right time. How to build trust. The tip 15, if you understand human nature and internalize the fact that all people are the same bodily species and spiritual quality, you will be non-judgmental. You will show, this will show through in all your behaviors. You will know that you mirror every deficiency you see in the person standing in front of you. If somebody commits a mistake, you will know that, oh, I may also commit the mistake, or I may have also committed the mistake in the past, or I may commit the mistake in the future. So you will be non-judgmental on anyone. And compassion, and you will have compassion, and compassion will bring trust. Trust will not come if you are judgmental. Those who take quick judgments about others, nobody can trust them. So to be trustworthy, and to get trust, one should reserve our judgment till we know the full situation, and we should be tolerant, we should be patient. When it comes to people, slow down and remember you are the same species in the same spiritual quality, and liberate that knowledge. Do not mirror differences, do not let minor differences cloud your thinking in today's diverse environment. When you need creativity and originality of thought more than ever. Creativity is very important, but when we start seeing faults in others, our creativity is lost. So let us be very creative and original, and mirror ourselves with others. Don't expect perfection from others all the time, but let us be ourselves very creative. Tip 16 is to understand yourself. If you understand yourself, you can understand others. For this, do a 5-minute retrospective every night. Normally, I would recommend to everyone, especially those who work at a workplace, please, before taking rest in the night, or whenever you find time in the evening after work, do a retrospective. Please start by asking yourself at the end of every day, did I do what I should have done? Just recount your day in brief and important moments of the day, and try to think whether I have done the right thing. Because sometimes when we retrospect, we realize that, oh, I did the wrong thing actually. We realize we can actually go a long way in our workplace if we do a retrospection. We can be changed. We can be a changed person. If the answer is yes, then we can sleep nicely. If not, then you start asking yourself why. Invariably, the answer is one that places responsibility for your action on someone else. This is your escape mechanism for taking responsibility for yourself. And why these behaviors get in the way of understanding others. Sometimes when we get answered, no, I did not do the right thing at this time. Why did I not do the right thing? Because this person, he stopped me, or this he is to blame for this, or that fellow is to blame for this. So by putting blame on others, we cannot do any retrospection or introspection. We lose the chance to really develop ourselves into a mature executive, employee, corporate person. Recognize self-defeating behaviors and emotions that get in the way of success, and stop indulging in them. Actually, put the blame on others and not introspect oneself is actually also self-defeating, because we don't get anywhere by that. We lose the favor of others, and also we lose the potential to actually learn and increase our own potential. Then we come to one of the most important virtues which is required in corporate life, honesty and integrity. Every employer wants every single employee to have honesty and integrity. And the employee also looks in the same way to the employer. So he who wrongs no one, fears no one. He has nothing to hide and so is fearless. He looks to everyone in their face. His step is firm, his body is upright, and his words are direct and straight. This is a symptom of an honest corporate executive. That because he is very clear, he is not wrong, he has honesty behind him. He fears no one. He can be self-confident. His honesty is directly related to self-confidence. And one can really be one's own natural self in front of others. One can look everyone directly in their eyes if one is honest within ourselves. So honesty means that you do not go against the voice of your conscience, which is the voice of your soul and God. Simply don't do anything which you know is wrong. That will make you honest. It is as simple as that. Sometimes honesty may entail some short-term sacrifice, but it will provide rich dividends in the end. Because of honesty, one may have to give up some things in the immediate There may involve, sometimes it may not involve, sometimes it may involve some kind of sacrifice, but don't worry about it, because it will make you a more better individual, it will make you a more better entrepreneur, you will become more attractive person for the company to work with, and you will become an asset for your own self, for your company. So values, values should be given as much importance as monetary gains. Cultivating values, making ourselves a better individual. So money is not everything. Honesty will give us the self-confidence in life to excel at work and in our life. So that is known as integrity. And now coming to the end of our session today, I would like to conclude with some basic do's and don't do's for corporate life. Summarize this session. The first one is be self-confident. Self-confident and understand that you are the instrument of God. You are the instrument of the company. You are connected with God. You are the soul. And be self-confident in whatever you do. And do it with integrity and honesty, then you will always be self-confident. Second is enlist your willpower. It is your strongest ally in the times of conflict. The power is within you. Understand that you are the spiritual spark, the soul. Aham Brahmasmi. That is the Vedic injunction. We are not simply that matter. We are the soul, the living spark in the body. So understand that, and you will get tremendous willpower in the times of conflict. You will not be affected. If somebody will speak to you some insulting words at the time of conflict, you will take it in a sporting way. Oh, he can speak, but I will never be affected by this word because I am a spiritual person. A spiritual person cannot be affected by material slander. So you will. That is known as real willpower, which comes from the soul. Comes from the soul. Third is ask questions to increase your knowledge. Seek counsel from others, keeping an open mind. Always be open. If you don't understand anything, then ask questions to increase your knowledge. The fourth one is take time to reflect before making a decision. The choice is yours, so having gathered enough data, make your own decision. Take time out to make a decision. Don't decide rashlessly or whimsically or instantly. And then the choice is yours. Gather data and make a proper decision. Arjuna decided very quickly, I don't want to fight the battle. Krishna is saying, don't take a rash decision. Actually, the battle is the right thing for you. You are becoming my instrument to destroy all the wrong forces on this earth. You are relieving the burden on this earth. So there may be always be a different angle to what we are thinking. So always explore all the different angles. Just like they say, boil the milk before drinking. Consider all the different angles of vision before taking some decision. Point number 5, do's. Practice moderation and self-discipline. Eat right, exercise the body, and do mantra meditation to calm the mind. A healthy body is necessary for doing your best. It is also a prerequisite for achieving control over your mind. A fleeting mind leads to lack of focus. I have been with Sunil Bhai Lalbhai to the hill, the top hill in the Atul colony. He goes there every day morning to take a walk. And it's a really good exercise. By the time you walk up and come down, you're so healthy and so fit to come to work. In fact, you feel very eager to have your breakfast also. And your breakfast is digested so quickly because so that's why you don't feel lethargic at work. So good exercise will help you to keep your body very fit. But also the most important thing at our work is not only our body, it's our mind. The mind is the ultimate cause and the source of optimal work output. The mind is very, very, very important. In fact, the single most important factor at work. And for calming the mind and soothing the mind, the only effective process prescribed in the Vedas is mantra meditation. Meditation is becoming a very, very common word all over the world now. Everyone is recognizing the importance of sitting down and having some form of concentration and the results are manifold. In some of the companies I read, they are actually doing the mantra meditation daily before starting for 5 minutes. And the employees are saying that it's very useful to them to actually automatically all the tips which we have discussed, they automatically come to them. They don't have to make an effort by the power of mantra meditation. So it will be very helpful. It is the practical and what we have discussed in the theory. Number 6 is help others, increase your viewpoint to include others. Others doing well can make you feel just as good as you are doing well yourself. Always be a broad-minded person, always try to add people into your viewpoint. Get a more holistic approach rather than feeling that only I am right, all others are wrong. That will not work in corporate life. Be more accommodative. And 7th is be calm. Excess emotion is a waste of energy and can sway judgment. If you feel yourself agitated, wait till you are calm and balanced before making any decision. Calmness is very important. It is when faced with tough choices, don't take refuge in inaction. Make decisions and follow up with action. Sometimes we get really tough decisions to make. At that time we just go into a kind of a coma. We don't take any action. We keep it all hanging. Oh, maybe I'll decide it tomorrow, I'll decide it later. But don't go into inaction. When you are faced with tough choices, think and make the right decision and follow it up with action. Number 9 is don't be judgmental of others. It keeps you from being kind. See the failings of others as mirrors to yourself and understand that you too may need help sometimes. When we become over judgmental of others, when we need help, we will not get help. They will also judge you and ignore you. And don't worry too much, it wastes precious energy and you do not attain anything from it. Don't worry too much. Just take things as they come. 11. Instead of just feeling guilty, do something to compensate for your misbehavior. Sometimes we do something wrong and then we feel guilty inside and we don't tell it to our colleagues and we don't tell it to our superior. No, just do something about it. Too much guilty feeling will lead us into frustration, depression at work. So try to be forthright about it and try. Charity is a positive channel for this energy. Try to share it with others, compensate for it. Number 12 is don't make excuses for yourself. You can overcome your weaknesses and wrong tendencies if you try. This is a struggle. Acknowledge that and just keep trying. Don't put the blame on others except you have made a mistake. I think nowadays the employers and the senior executives, they recognize those employees who are actually accepting their mistakes. They are considered more favorable than those who keep on putting the blame on others or avoiding it. So just accept and you will have a much better response than you are expected. Number 13, be always prepared for anything and everything by the dint of the spiritual strength. Never think that nothing, okay, never be satisfied. Always be prepared. And to end today's seminar, I would like to show you some slides on the power of calming the mind. The mind, as I said, is even the body is fully fit. The mind actually makes us a success or a failure at work. So calming the mind is very, very important, and no amount of material techniques can help us, no amount of external techniques can help us to calm the mind. Dr. Greg Jacobs, he was in the Harvard Medical School, he is the author of The Ancestral Mind. He has very deeply studied the mind and relation with the workplace and corporate life, and he has come to the following conclusions. Did a study of those who meditate. They perform mantra meditation before their work or daily or regular basis, and those who don't, they just report for work without considering the mind. And we found that the relaxation actually increases. The yellow one is the meditation group, and the blue one is the control group, which were not subjected to meditation. And he found that the power of the alpha waves is a total of EEG power, and the power of the theta waves in the brain is a percentage of the EEG power. So those who meditate, their left side of the brain and the right side of the brain, both the sides of the brain work with much higher efficiency than those who don't. The blue lines are showing at a reduced level of efficiency. So mantra meditation is becoming a very popular phenomenon even in corporate life, because it is quite effective to increase the efficiency of the brain. You see, before meditation, so many waves are there: frontal lobe, parietal lobe, and occipital lobe. It looks very disturbed and agitated, so many colors, so many desires, so many thoughts. So the focus cannot be there. Even there is a decrease in the beta waves, and the cortex is not processing information as actively as usual. So the relaxation one gets during the meditation actually boosts the efficiency of our mind and the brain, and it becomes very, very peaceful. And it is said a peaceful mind is actually the root cause of success, because it can analyze and make decisions very nicely. It's a very ancient discipline, and scientists have only recently developed tools sophisticated enough to see what goes on in our brain and when we do it. So basically the cortex and the occipital lobe, the hypothalamus, temporal lobe, cerebellum, pituitary gland, these are all the main parts of the brain which are very active and they make all the decisions. So the first is the frontal cortex. This is the most highly evolved part of the brain, responsible for reasoning, planning, emotions, self-conscious awareness. And during meditation, the frontal cortex, it tends to go offline. Means it gets a complete relaxation. It becomes totally fit for making efficient use later on. The parietal lobe, the number 2, in this part of the brain processes sensory information about the surrounding world, orienting you in the time and space. During meditation activity, the parietal lobe slows down and also gets rested. Does anybody work without getting sleep? No. We all need rest to be more efficient next day. Have you seen, if you don't get enough relaxation, have you not seen your efficiency go down? So we are giving our body the rest, and even our brain may get some rest during sleep. But as per the medical science, the REM sleep, which gives rest to our brain, is only maybe 1 hour in the night, 1 to 1.5 hours. Hardly we get enough time. Even during sleep we are dreaming. So even then our brain is not getting enough rest to really get tuned up for the next day at work. So we really need to relax and give ultimate relaxation to all parts of our brain which are responsible for making the right decisions. The thalamus is the gatekeeper for all the senses. This organ focuses your attention by funneling some sensory data deeper into the brain and stopping other signals in their tracks. So meditation reduces the flow of incoming information to a trickle, thus giving the thalamus very good relaxation, making it fit for the next day. And the reticular formation as the brain century, this such structure receives incoming stimuli and puts the brain on alert, ready to respond. Meditating dials back the arousal signal. This meditation keeps us always on the alert. It helps us to, this is not any fiction, but this is a research, a detailed research done by Dr. Greg Jacobs himself in the Harvard Medical University. So, meditation, especially on a spiritual sound, meditation just on something black will not help us so much, rather than meditation on a mantra as per the Gita. Mantra meditation is the most recommended method in the Vedas and Gita to unleash the full potential of our mind and intelligence at the workplace, in our life also. There are two specific mantras which are very small mantras. The smaller the mantra, the more powerful, the more effective the mantra is to actually liberate our mind and to reveal the full potential of our mind. And so these two mantras which are most recommended by the Vedas are, the first mantra is Nityananda. 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 This mantra is a very blissful mantra. It creates a sense of very much satisfaction, peace and bliss within us, so that we are always on the go. It awakens our full potential in whatever we are doing. It actually awakens our soul. If the potential of the full soul is awakened, there is no estimation how many heights we can reach. You won't even believe how much of potential will be revealed to you when you perform this, try out this mantra meditation. It will be totally unbelievable. And the second mantra is Gauranga, Gauranga, Gauranga. This powerful mantra, it